What is up? Thank you for not only downloading this nutrition calculator, but then also watching this video. By far, the most important thing that you need to have, understood before you can effectively change your, your physique, your appearance. Also, if you want to put on size or burn fat, this is what everybody needs to start with. So everybody that has found success, this is the starting point that you need to have understood. So the other reason for that is because it's sustainable. I put up a post and I talk about this, but I've had so many friends go on diets like keto, and I've even done that myself, but none of that is as practical. Anything that's like a restrictive practice, it's something that's going to inhibit, I'll call it quote unquote normal life. And so if it's going to do that, then it's not going to be sustainable. This is a sustainable approach to it so that you can still gain the strength you want, cut the fat that you need, not socially isolate yourself from friends or events, and still indulge in things like pizza and donuts in moderation. So it might look a little bit dry, but we'll get into all of it. I promise it won't take that much time to understand. So what I've put together in this sheet and what I'll have you do is enter in your own values. So essentially, if you really easy to start off, we'll enter in our name. So I'll start off and just do this for myself so that you can see what it would be like for you. From there, the first place that we're going to start is right here, which is body weight. And so I'll start by entering my body weight. I'm currently 180 pounds. I'll also note that this is in the imperial system. So if you're in the metric system or in kilograms, I would just use Google and change your kilograms to pounds and plug that in, and it'll operate the same way. And what it just calculated for us, you'll see that if I delete that number and come back, all of these numbers kind of change around here. And so what this is doing, if I put in 180, is it's calculating this number to our right, estimated TDEE. And you'll see that on the Excel sheet, I put a bunch of different little helpful comments that's indicated by these purple marks. But on here, TDEE, you don't have to remember that acronym. It pretty much means our maintenance calories. It stands for total daily energy expenditure. This is how many calories are we burning on a daily basis just to survive, exist as humans. And it's commonly referred to, like on social media and other places you might have seen it, as your maintenance calories. So it's a pretty basic formula, and what I have here is the most basic approach that we can take. Is you take a range of 14 to 16, you multiply that by your weight in pounds, and then it's going to give you a number. This is a great approximation for around where your maintenance calories will be. The other way to look at this is to use BMR. And so when I'm calculating, I use both, and I would encourage you to do so as well. And so BMR stands for basal metabolic rate. Basal metabolic rate is pretty much how many calories a body, or it's for animals as well, burns at rest. And so this is the most important part of the process, is figuring out these maintenance calories. So anyway, a body at rest is going to be burning calories for our brains to function, for our lungs to breathe, our heart to pump blood through our body. We're burning calories, and so there's a very simple equation to figure this out. For men, it's this one right here, and then for women, it's this one. And so what I did, well, down here, is that I took this equation, I plugged in my numbers. So I did 180 pounds. You can see that right there. So 6.23 times my weight in pounds, 12.7 times my height in inches, and I'm 5'9", so that's 69 inches. And then my 6.8 times my age in years, I'm 27. Great. So that calculated value of 1,880. You might be asking yourself, okay, that's significantly less than the number that we came to up here. So, what gives? And total daily energy expenditure factors in a lot of different aspects. TDEE is a makeup of one, BMR, but then also things like NEAT and a few other factors. To simplify it, it's pretty much a body at rest is what our BMR is. We do more than just rest all day. Some of us, myself included, sometimes just lay on the couch, but we also get up, go to the store, walk into work when there's a pandemic going on. We also do things, we burn calories when we're digesting food. So even food intake can affect this. And then, of course, additional exercise on top of that burns more calories. So what you do is you take this BMR, and then you can multiply it by something called an activity multiplier, which are all of these fields right here. So you can pretty much read them off. If you rarely exercise, multiply by your BMR times 1.2, 1.35, it's 1 to 3 days a week of exercise, 3 to 5 days a week. And so for myself, I put myself at 1.5. You can see if you exercise 3 to 5 days a week, multiply it by 1.5. Now, typically I would maybe go higher, like 1.7, but while I've been in quarantine, I've had lower energy expenditure. And so what I did is I multiplied by 1.5, and that got me 2,820. Now, the reason that we do this is because I want to compare that to our very general or ballpark number up here. Remember, what we're figuring out is what our maintenance calories are. How many calories are we burning on a daily basis, and why is this even important, right? It's because once we figure out our maintenance calories, that's the number that we base our adjustments on. So if I want to go into a deficit or cut and lose fat, then I have to be eating in a deficit, a caloric deficit. What that means is that if I'm burning somewhere between 2,700 and 2,820 calories a day just through my daily activities and existing, then to lose weight, I have to eat less than that. If I want to put on size, lean muscle mass, then I would want to eat in a surplus and essentially bulk up and put on muscle. So that's what these two numbers are, is that you've got your deficit, which the way I've calculated this, and you can change this number, you can be more or less aggressive, but I've taken my total daily energy expenditure, my maintenance calories, and I've subtracted it by 500. So that gets me 2,200 calories that I should be consuming. Now, what about the discrepancy between my BMR and activity between this generic one? Pretty much what I'd like to do, as long as we're talking about 120 calories here, that is something worth maybe going in between, and I can put myself at 2,775 calories. If it's, I'd say, less than 400 plus or minus discrepancy, the thing that we're making sure of is that we're in the ballpark here. There is a way that you can calculate even more specifically than this, but it would essentially mean that you track your calories every day for 14 days and then look at what the weight change is, and it's not my preferred method. This is a good way, actually a great way, to figure out what you're burning daily and go from that point. It's a starting point for us, but it still is an approximation. So anyway, with that said, I'll leave it at the 2,700 right now. If I wanted to, I could put it at 2,775, but I like that it's a nice round number for us. So if I wanted to cut, what this cell is already doing is that it's subtracting 500 calories. So that means on a daily basis, I would be eating 500 calories less than what my body burns. And the whole point of this is that over a 7-day period, we would burn 3,500 calories, which is exactly how many calories are in a pound of fat. So if you want to burn a pound of fat, then you have to essentially eat in a deficit of 3,500 calories over time. So if we're eating in a 500 calorie deficit, that means every week I'd lose a pound of fat. Now, you can make this more aggressive. You could put it at 600, but I really wouldn't go any higher than that. So if you've got a lot of fat to lose, then I guess more fat is that, look at this as, again, sustainability. You want to chip away a little bit at a time. If you go into a greater than 600 calorie deficit, it can have a negative effect on hormones, stress level, a whole plethora of things. And it's also weight that would, I would say, most likely come back, because that's not something that you can sustain long term. Then if we look at bulk, what I did here is I only added in 300 calories a week. So, it begs the question, why aren't I adding in 500 calories? Or excuse me, not a week, a day. Why aren't I adding in 500 calories a day to give me a pound of muscle a week? And it's because it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It takes much longer to build lean muscle than it does to lose fat. So our bodies can burn fat much quicker than our bodies can build muscle. In fact, it's almost like we can cut fat almost at twice the rate as you can build muscle. So the reason that we don't go as aggressive with our bulk is because we don't want to store excess body fat while we're building. Great. So now it begs the question, now that we know our caloric intake, even for a deficit, how do we make sure that we're losing as much fat as possible without losing muscle mass? And that's where our macronutrients come into play. So just a quick recap of what I've covered here is that we need to establish our energy balance. Energy is calories, so we need to establish what our maintenance calories are. And that's what we've just done, is we've looked at both our very simple calculation and then did a little bit more complex one and made sure that they're in line. If they're not in line, if they're out by like, let's say 600, 700 calories, there's a lot of things that can affect this. So if you do the very simple calculation, this is for people that are around, like in moderate health, I'd say sub 30%, 35% body fat, and under the age of probably 40. If you have more fat to lose, body fat to lose, let's say that I was around, 270 pounds to even 300 and my same height, and if I was older, then you start to burn less calories with as you age, and those are other things that come into play. So that's why I like to do both of these. This is a very generic approach and simple approach, but then if you compare that to this simplified one versus your BMR, and it's way off, I would go with your BMR level times the activity multiplier and use that and replace that with the value here. Great. So we've covered that. And now before going on to our macronutrients, and they should already be calculated just based on this number getting filled out. And again, if you need to, then replace that with the number that you'll find down here. But the reason that we covered that is because the most important step is our energy balance. Our energy balance is our maintenance calories. Understanding that so that we can manipulate it to either be in a deficit or bulk up. From there, what we're going to do is just look at these equations. So the way that it's currently set up in the sheet for us is that it's multiplying our body weight times 1. So why is it doing that? If we look at this little help comment here, you'll see that protein is a range. So for protein specifically, I like to do it based on our body weight. And then for our fats and carbohydrates, I like to do it based on a percentage. So with our protein, if you're in a cut, you want to actually increase your protein intake relative to if you were bulking. The reason for this is because when you're in a deficit, your body is utilizing, it's operating on less calories per day than what you need to survive. So where is it getting that extra energy? And it's getting it from your fat storage. So that's what fat is. It's a calorie storage and energy storage for us to utilize when we're not eating enough or getting enough food. But the reason we don't want to, or the reason that we want to increase our protein intake in a caloric deficit or a cut is because we want to retain as much muscle mass as lean muscle as possible. So the range of 1.1 to 1.3 grams per pound of body weight is where you'd want to fall if you were cutting down. So what I'll do for myself, just to speak to this, is I'll do 1.1, and you'll see that this is in grams, that I would need 198 grams of protein a day. This is the number that shocks most people. The moment that they see, 150 to 200, 250 grams of protein, they're wondering, how in the world do I get that much? And that's where protein supplements and why protein shakes have become so common over the years, because it's a great way and it's the cheapest way to supplement your food intake to hit that number. All right, had to adjust something there. But now that we're done with our protein, what we're going to look at is our fat. And with our protein, we're basing that on our body weight. So 180 times that range of anywhere from 0.8 if you're bulking to 1.1 if you're cutting. And next, we're going to look at our fat, which is, it's also a range, but it's percentage based. So instead of doing it based on our body weight, what we're going to do it on is a percentage of our total calories. So if we look at this equation, and you can see it up here, if I click on that, you can see that it's C4, which it's selecting this cell, which is our deficit or our cutting calories that we're eating on a daily basis, and we're taking 25% of those. So this is the range that we'd manipulate, is that percentage. In a deficit, it's anywhere from 15% to 25%. In a bulk, it's anywhere from, I believe it's 20 to 30. Let me hover over this. Yeah, right there you can see if we're cutting, it's 15 to 20%. If you're gaining or bulking up, then it's 20 to 30%. But essentially, I'm this is the number that I can manipulate. So if I want it to be 30%, if I was bulking, then I would just put a 3 there. If I want it to be 15%, then I would put that there. And then we're dividing by 9. So why are we dividing by 9? I'm going to put that back to 25. And we're dividing by 9 because there's 9 calories per gram of fat. So if I take 25% of my total calories, then that will give me a certain number, right? It'll give me 25% of my daily calorie intake, and then I divide by 9 to figure out how many grams of fat I want. From there, we figure out the last one, and carbs are the, I guess, well, they look the most complicated, but they're the easiest. We just fill in the rest with our carbohydrates. So if I look at my carbohydrates, you can see here that the equation is our total bulking or cutting calories minus our protein times 4 plus our fats times 9 divided by 4. Let's break that down because it's a whole bunch of information. If I click on this, you can see that there's a lot of stuff going on. It's doing C4 minus. So what is C4? C4 is our deficit or our cutting calories. And we're subtracting that from B6, which is our protein, 198 times 4. Why are we doing times 4? It's because there's 4 calories per gram of protein. So if we've already calculated our protein at 198 grams a day, and we multiply that by 4, that means that would be, X number of calories coming from protein. We'll add that to B7, which we can't see at the moment, but that's this cell right here. This is B7, and it's calculating 61. So B7 times 9, why are we doing times 9? Because there's 9 calories per gram of fat. So if I take 61, which is my daily grams in fat, times 9 calories, that's going to give us X number of calories per day coming from fat. So now if I take this number and I minus it from these two together, then that'll give me a certain calorie amount. So if I get rid of that 4, you'll see that it gives me 854. Now that's 854 calories, but then if we want that in grams, we know that there are 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. And so I would divide that by 4, and that gets us 215. So that's how this is working here. If you want to, like for fat, we were working on a percentage-based range. If you prefer more fat in your diet, like I do, then you could go up to the 25. If you prefer carbohydrates and you want more carbs in your day, then you might stick to the 15% of fat, and then your carbs would be more. For example, if I change this 25 to 15, you'll see that our carbs just went from 215 to 270, but we also just lowered from I think it was close to 60 grams of fat down to 37. So I prefer more fat, in my diet, and that's why I leave it at 25% like that. Wonderful. So the next part of this, and I appreciate you sticking with me. I know this is like kind of dense math information, but the next part of this is essentially our goal weight. So if I want to get down to let's say 168, and I hit enter, then this is going to calculate a few things for me. So if we look here, it's taking my body weight minus our goal weight. Why does that work this way? Well, it's only because that this is assuming that we were in a 500 calorie deficit. So if we're in a 500 calorie deficit, that would be the 3,500 calories a week, which would also equate to 1 pound of fat. So this assumes that we're going to be losing 1 pound per week if it's a 500 calorie deficit. That doesn't factor in additional cardio. That doesn't factor in if you want to be less aggressive or more aggressive. So it would take me 12 weeks to essentially get down to that goal weight. Now, and then months, I'm just dividing by 4. So that's how many months it would take. 3 months. Great. And that's kind of the breakdown of everything on the sheet. I did put little notes down here, and this goes into another topic, but it's what should we expect from when we're our rate of fat loss and our rate of weight gain. There's a lot that goes into this, but for the sake of simplicity, is that how do you know if you're on track? The scale can be a tough guide because you can fluctuate daily if you're holding on to more water, if you had a big dinner the night before. And so the way that you want to track is essentially you take your weight every morning naked after you've gone to the bathroom, and you take that every morning at the same time, same method, and then you add all those up over a 7-day period, and divide by 7. And then for your next week, you take the previous 7 days, add up all of them, divide by 7, and then that would give you your expected rate of change, or like how much you've truly lost. And so with that in mind, if you're going beyond this threshold, or if you're not hitting this threshold, then you know that you can adjust your caloric needs. So let's say that after 2 weeks, you don't see enough fat loss. After 2 weeks, maybe you should be down around 2 pounds. And if you're not, then what that means is that maybe we were off a little bit on what we were estimating for our maintenance calories. From there, you could actually, you could try bringing this number down a little bit. Or what you could do is take this and say like, okay, well, maybe let's try minus 600 calories to advance this weight loss progression. Now, the other side of that is, what if you're losing weight too quickly? So if you're losing more than 1% of your body weight, for example, for me, that would be 1.8, right? Because 1.8 is 1% of 180. So if I was losing more than 1.8 pounds per week, that would be too aggressive, and I would actually need to add more calories in. The reason that we would do that is sustainability. We do not want to approach, especially our weight manipulation or weight changes, over aggressively, because it's going to negatively affect our long-term health, or even the sustainability of that over a long period of time. So this is the rate of fat loss which you should expect. And then on the other side of that, we've got our bulking or gaining. And so, as I mentioned, we can lose fat almost twice as fast as we can build muscle. So for a beginner, intermediate, and advanced, there's going to be different stages here. But what you should be expecting to see is, over the span of a month, not a week, anywhere from 1% to 1.5% of your body weight. So over the span of a month, if I was a beginner, I could expect to see somewhere between 1.8 and 2.2 pounds maybe of weight gain over the span of a full month, not just a week. Now, I would probably place myself more on the intermediate, going up to advanced stage, and you can see that over time, you're actually able to add less weight over time. That's why a lot of people that are very, advanced in like bodybuilding, it takes them years to put on even a couple of pounds of muscle, which is actually a beautiful thing, because if you are a beginner, that's when you can see the most lucrative amounts of changes to your body. You can either get into something called body recomposition, which is only possible for a select few at the beginning stages. And body recomposition is when you can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time for a limited period of time in your newbie gains, essentially. But once you become more advanced, then that's why it's important to stick to set periods of bulking or intentionally putting on muscle mass, and cutting, which is when you're going to be trimming away the fat and retaining as much of that lean muscle that you've built up as possible. All right. I know that was a lot of information over a lot of time, but that explains the sheet entirely. So if you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am going to be opening enrollment for coaching spots. So if you want to get more assistance on this and guidance, of course, because this changes over time, right? Like once you are losing weight, then your daily energy expenditure is going to change. So this should be updated on your end pretty frequently, let's say every 3 to 4 weeks. But this is, if you're looking for assistance, if you want to know more about this, then feel free to ask me questions at all. Or if you want to know more about the coaching program that I have set up, then please respond to the email. Hit me up on social media, specifically Instagram. It's just Barta Fitness. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. So thank you for the time, and best of luck. And I look forward to hearing from you. Cheers.